Welcome to Soul Talk Tuesday. Ahriana, your host, and so happy to be here on Zoom. Normally, I would say here in the studio, but we're not in the studio. We are miles apart and heart connected across the cyber heart of humanity. There you go. How about that?
I like it. The cyber heart of humanity. Yes.
Yeah. So for the last several months during this COVID season, we've been meeting with people across time and space in a safe way and also in a heart connected way. And really just reminding ourselves that even though we are far apart from one another, we are one with the whole divine shebang. And that means that there are webs of love connecting us. And it is my great pleasure tonight to introduce you to my friend Saffire, who we were just talking before we started about how long we've known each other, which is by my count about 21 years now. And we keep crossing paths. What happens is we keep ending up at the same place. Like we register for events and we show up and go, hey, I know you. And it's been that way. So it was a little work to kind of track down where was it exactly that we met and what were we doing. But most of the time when we gather, it's around a sacred fire. And most of the time there is ceremony and there is amazing drumming and there's chanting and there's transformation. And that is kind of in my mind what I always think of when I think of you, my friend. I always think about how much you transform any space you enter. So I could gush and gush a lot about all of the amazing things that you do, about the way that you move through the world, bringing rhythm and bringing music and bringing movement. Your professional biography reads a little bit as a who's who. You have been everywhere and done everything, it seems.
There's still more to do.
That's the reason I asked you to be here with me tonight is because in this time of pandemic and politics and social change, it's really important. It's really tempting to jump out of your body. It's really tempting to get out of your own skin and just, be up in your head and thinking all the time and listening to the monkey mind. And so it's fascinating to me that you call yourself an embodyologist. To me, that sounds like we should be talking to this guy. We should be finding out from this guy how we stay in our form. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you became an embodyologist and what that means.
What that means. That term was actually given to me by one of my students. My students over the years, my movement students, have referred to me as two things that really stuck with me. One was a spiritual drill sergeant, and the other one was an embodyologist. And I adopted spiritual drill sergeant didn't roll so well, but embodyologist definitely fit for me. And as a Black male, as 5 planets in Virgo human being, as far as when I incarnated on the planet, I'm very, very earth-based and body-based and sensation and sensory. And as you spoke, it's very easy to get up in our head about things, especially now. And something that was pointed out to me once is that even enlightenment still happens in the body, right? And embodiment doesn't happen out there. It happens, it's embodiment. It's being so full all the way up to third eye pineal, all to oneness consciousness. But that experience happens through the body. So being in our body is crucial right now because we have a whole world that's just, I mean, the state that we're in is because people operate from the brain, you know, and not even the good aspects of the brain or the mind. That's a whole nother conversation, but let's just say that's where it operates from. So thus here we are, you know. So Embodyologist, like, plus it's so much nicer to be here, to smell, to sense, to move, to connect, to all of those wonderful, juicy things happen in this container. Drums is my first or second love with movement, depending on which day you ask me. And that's all, again, through the body. It's the body to spirit channel. Keep bringing it home. Keep coming home. Keep arriving. You know, my main practices and the main things I teach are NIA, which is Neuromuscular Integrative Action, NIA, and it's a body, mind, emotion, and spirit fitness and lifestyle practice. And I'm actually the first African-American male to have a black belt and a first-degree black belt in NIA in the world. And so I've taught in 16 countries in the last 16 years. And ironically, no matter where I go in the world, my primary audience is upper middle class white women, because that's mostly who the practice is. That has been both cool in some ways and treacherous in other ways. But at this point, those who are still around, it's a quite unique audience to have. And I bring that embodiment of this is real, this is happening. You know, we can talk about the things, but and I'm in Portland, so the whole feds being here thing, like all of that, like I have friends who were mothers on the front line, like 5 of my students were mothers on the front line, some of whom got some damage to them, some of whom didn't, but those are the people that I'm speaking to, and I get to keep, hey, the work's not done. Hey, great job, and the work's not done. Excellent work, and we're not done. So, yeah, I'm just about having people be as joyfully, as fully, as sensuously, as lovingly in their body as much of the time as possible. That is my answer to that question.
So I love that answer. That's one of the things that I love about you, and having spent time around you, it's you kind of exude that embodiment. You know, even just watching you move your hands, reach out, all the things that you do, that's very much who you are in the world, that
Yeah.
that is totally in the form. I do want to go to the front lines and talk about what's going on in Portland, because you're there, but I don't do that. I don't want to start there.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff I want to share with these folks about who you are, and I want them to have a really good sense of the gifts that you bring. So I'm a NIA Blue Belt. I haven't taught in years, but I'm really familiar with that practice. And you're right on target when you talk about who's involved in that particular movement practice. And you have had an opportunity to travel to some really exotic, beautiful places. So one of those places is a place that I always wanted to go and will go, and that's Bali.
I knew you were going to say that.
Demo, don't I? I'm right in the middle of that demographic.
Yeah.
So tell me about how it's different to do movement in the United States and to do it in a place like Bali, or places you've been in Europe, other places that you teach.
Right. Well, as I've said, anywhere that I teach, with very few exceptions, it's primarily upper middle class white women, and an occasional a guy will float through. So the same is true in Bali. Like, the Balinese didn't come to class at the place where I worked. It was all upper middle class white women who were traveling through because they have the resources and the money to do that, who were my students even there. A funny side note, once a week, the place where I worked did have a class where just the Balinese came, and I taught for them. So we did that like once a week. And that was classic, you know, because they're a very interesting culture. I've taught there, that particular time I was there for a year teaching. But before that, I've been there for a month here, a month there. It was my 7th time being to Bali. And it's really, really interesting because I'd be teaching something that like had movement from the pelvis. And this whole group of like 20 to 30 something, mostly men, would be out tee hee tee, because that like that expression is just not a thing that you do. And so it was like the permission to do that and the space. So it was very interesting. I hadn't thought about that for quite a number of years, but yeah, teaching in Bali. So that was teaching at a place. If you have a question about Bali, and it's too big to just address. Each of the 7 times I've been there, my experience was completely different, you know. And it was different going to the place where I taught for a year. 3 of those times I went and I was just a guest teacher. And as a guest teacher, I got treated way better than I did when I was like suddenly someone on staff and I worked there. It's like, can we go back to the other treatment? That was way better, you know. So that's funny.
So let me ask you, you work on getting people in their body, and my experience with teachers is that they teach what they most need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a reason we end up on the path that we're on. Was there a time in your life that you felt separate from your body, or something that moved you in this particular direction?
Oh, ooh, look at you busting those questions, huh? Well, here's the thing. I've been asthmatic ever since I was 2. So I've taken medication every day of my life for the last 54 years in order to stay alive. So the fact that I even do what I do for a living is kind of miraculous in and of itself for me, let alone like what it evidently is from what I hear for my students. For me, it is. From a history of abuse, a history of being Black while breathing in the United States, just all of my experience as a being, it was like Nia became this thing where the parts of me that put me on the side suddenly were the things that made me fantastic at doing this. I found a place where not only was I welcomed, but like desired and needed.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a young Black kid from the hood, to have achieved a level of mastery at anything that it could take me around the world, that was like mind blowing. Like I would never have gone pretty much most of the places I've been. Most of my travel has been because I went there to teach. And wow, what a ride that is, to go to Europe and come back with more money than you left with. You know what I mean? And to have stayed in these amazing places and met with these amazing people and made a difference. You know, I remember teaching in Budapest, which I've taught in 9 times, and having 60 and 70-year-old women come up to me at the end of a workshop or a class, just eyes filled with tears, and just saying they've never had that level of freedom of expression in their life ever. And like, how amazing is that? As that's what I do when I go to work. Like, what a gift, what a amazing thing, you know.
Changing.
Huh?
And really life-changing.
And really life-changing, yeah.
Yeah.
The first woman who brought me out to Budapest, the very first time I was going to travel internationally, her name was Andi. And she was awesome. It was like the 3rd time she had brought me out. And we were doing this weekend weekend-long retreat. And it was basically 60 Hungarian women and me, right? And people joke, they say, oh, dude, rough job. Here you are with all these beautiful women, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, but the irony is, in order to be that guy, you don't even remotely get to be that guy. You know what I mean? Like it's like, so here and literally, so I'm teaching the workshop and it's like a lucid dream. I look around and I'm like, I'm surrounded by gorgeous Hungarian women who were like right in this soup with me. And it was like, what an honor to service the goddess in this way, to serve the divine feminine, the feminine in this way. It was like, and like, that was all I thought about. And then it was like, just like back in. And my friend Andy, who brought me out, was kind of angry with me at the end of the retreat. She was like, how come they're having like all these breakthroughs and all these things when you come and I'm their teacher all the time? She was a little like professionally a little miffed at me. And it came to me, the same thing as that lucidity was like, sweetie, it's because I bring the divine masculine. I hold that space for all these people. And when I recognized that, it was kind of game over. That was just like a whole nother level. Like, that's literally what I do for this practice. It's 5% men who teach it or do it. I'm the first African-American male to be doing it at the level that I'm doing it at. And to offer that and to do it for primarily white upper middle class women, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a whole thing that's happening there.
Yeah. And so what is interesting to me as I listen to you is, when you look at divine feminine and divine masculine, and you remember, first of all, that we all have those pieces of ourselves, right? Like we all embody both of those things, and we all express those.
That's what is amazing to me about my job. My job is to get people to embody both sides of that. Like, that's literally what I do when I go to work, for myself and for those who are there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when we look at divine masculine, one of the things that I sometimes I get some pushback from women when I say this, but divine masculine is the protector.
Mm-hmm.
Divine masculine really holds sacred space and makes it safe to fully embody divine feminine.
Yes.
So, and that would be one of the things that if I were to say, spending time with you and having been in ceremonial space with you, you hold that really interesting kind of protector energy that isn't about everybody get out of the way, I'm protecting these women. It's much more about you're safe to be who you are. Like, really be who you are, really step in and, be in this amazing vessel and be who you are. And this space is yours right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a powerful gift. That's a really powerful gift that you bring to this work.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you do a lot of other stuff.
I do indeed.
I don't spend all my time there.
Say one thing, if I may. The other interesting part of what you were just saying about the divine masculine, divine feminine, and me is I myself am actually pretty close to half and half in embodied masculine and feminine energy myself, which I think is one of the reasons that I can relate to the women so well. But it also took me years to engage and embody my divine masculine. Like, it wasn't until my late 40s that I actually took ownership of it, because I always interpreted it to be the destructive force on the planet. And that was my story about it. And that's what I was shown by the person that I thought was my father, and story. And it wasn't until I encountered some things that showed me that the masculine is all of these properties, from not so good to divine, as is a divine feminine. It was the first time I said, oh, okay, I exist somewhere on that scale, for sure. And from there, here I am.
And that's powerful, because I keep saying I want to wait till we get into the Black Lives Matter stuff. And I have to comment here because I've, I'm relatively new on this, like, change my whole self to understand more journey. You don't realize how much crazy stuff you don't know until you realize it.
Yeah.
And being white in the world right now is a huge wake up call. So I have a column in the local paper here, and I have turned that column over and invited Black voices to use that column to express what it's like to be in the world right now. And so for the last 9 weeks, I've been interacting with people who I got to tell you, first of all, I feel a huge sense of loss that it took me 20 years in Colorado Springs to meet these amazing human beings. And now that I've met them and now that I'm listening, they're telling me about some of the experiences they've had. Like I spoke with a business owner here last week, and he wrote for the column, and he shared a story that he came from Ethiopia, and when he got here, he was jogging with he came for college, and he was jogging with one of the guys in college, and as they were jogging down the street, his white friend got ahead of him. And a police officer in a car pulled over his car, jumped out of the car, ran up to him and asked him why he was chasing this other guy. And of course, he had been here for 2 weeks. He was just totally in shock about, what am I doing wrong? Thankfully, his white friend came back around and came and talked, and they got it all straightened out. But he talks about, getting pulled over while he was jogging, which is a great funny story and not funny at all. And so what I have learned, both from men and women, but specifically from men, is that it's really hard to be a Black man in America because there's a perception of threat. He talked about walking down the street the first few weeks he was here and hearing people click their car door locks and what that was like. So when you say how hard it was and how long it took you, maybe not hard, maybe that's a misstatement, but how long it took you to step into that possession and ownership of your masculine side, man, that seems like
Right.
that's a bigger thing. That's what I want to point out, is that may be a much bigger thing.
Right. Well, to speak to that, excuse me, everybody, clear the throat. Still, so yes, all of that we just said, and I have to be very careful of too much of expression of any kind that could be perceived as threatening. Like an angry Black man in the world, that's automatically, or in the country, that's automatically tagged as dangerous. I was actually driving back from being on tour with my best friend, and we're like brother and sister, and she said something that just pissed me off, and I just had to kind of let go. And so I pulled the car over, and I was like, and I just really just kind of tantrumed a little bit while she was sitting in the car next to me. And I didn't direct it at her, it was all fine. We that's where we were, and that's when it didn't happen. But we both commented on, had I done that outside of the car, that's like, God knows what might have happened.
Yeah.
And it's just that kind of thing of, there's so many stories of getting pulled over while walking while Black that I have.
Well, and can you talk, I read something that you wrote around the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Would you tell that story?
That was a big piece. Wow. Okay. Tell that story. All right. A friend of mine has a cabin at the beach here in Oregon, and he's family with me, and so it was like, yeah, use the cabin, 4th of July. I'm like, great. So as I was driving, something happened in my psyche, and it was almost like every American flag I saw, just given the protests and the killing of Black men and just all these things, it just kept occurring to me like the flag was a lie. and I'm not like that guy that walks around with that, but like that was just my actual visceral experience, right? So then I get to the cabin, and it's surrounded by other cabins, and normally when I've gone there, I'm like the only person there, or somebody's in one of the other houses, and it's not a thing. But this time it was like families and kids and grandparents, and everybody was there for the 4th of July and fireworks on the beach. So I got there, and the first thing I did was make sure I went and introduced myself to every house, every family. Hi, I'm Saffire. I'm staying at blah, 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 blah. I'm a friend of, I'm staying there. Nice to meet you. I got invited to the picnic, to the barbecue. Like it was all very cool. But I recognized after the fact what I had done. And that is I made sure that all of these white families were familiar with this black face, because all I needed was somebody at the wrong time and the wrong way to see me standing out by the lake and be like, who's the dark-skinned person, and suddenly the cops are called, and we all know different scenarios that can happen from there. And I did it automatically, and I'm so grateful that I have the skill set that I did it. And it wasn't inauthentic. It was like, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean? But at the same time, it was also a survival mechanism, right? And I didn't realize that till after the fact. Like, there was no way I could have not done that and remained safe, because it literally would take one person, one phone call, and that again reinforced the freedom for who, from who, 4th of July. You know what I mean? So I went inside, I, joined them for the picnic. I got some food. I went in, ate, because I went there for time for myself. Went inside, ate my food, watched a little bit of a show or something. And then the fireworks start. And it's on the beach, and it's just crazy. Fireworks everywhere. And then I thought, okay, dude, well, you only have one night. You're here at the beach on the 4th of July. Of course, you got to go out and see. And I went and I opened the front door, and just the wash of smoke and, powder and just like whatever the explosives are made of just came hit me right in the face. Like I was walking out into a war zone. And it occurred to me, because that's what fireworks are. We're imitating the explosions and the sounds and the everything of war. And the thing is, I love fireworks as much as anybody. So don't get me wrong about that. Love some fireworks. And that's what they are mimicking. And so all of that combined with, I opened and I just went, I'm not feeling it. The flag, feeling like a lion, me having to do that to survive. The protest, I just closed the door and just went back inside.
Yeah.
So that's the short version of that story.
It's such a powerful story, and it came to me in words. I read it.
Yeah.
And it made me tearful. And that's what I find more and more as I let myself go into this and, actually insist on being in this conversation and not being on the sidelines. First of all, there's this kind of tremendous sense of, where the hell have I been? How did I spend so many years not really getting what was happening around me? And I'm in it. We're going to do something. This is going to change. I spoke with a gentleman here who's a pastor about this. His name is Promise Lee, and he said, there are 3 ways you can do things. You can do things to, you can do things for, or you can do things with. And he said, you don't want to do to in this situation. Sometimes you will have to do for. Sometimes the color of your skin will allow you to open doors and make things happen that someone else can't do. But most of the time, your effort needs to be to do with. To do with. And so I'm really committed to that. And also, like committed to getting over the fact that it's uncomfortable. Like it just is.
Yep.
that you can go to be 59 years old and not understand is it, you know, I could let myself go down a really dark spiral. It wouldn't do anybody any good. But when I read stories like what happened to you and my friend who was jogging and I was recently telling someone, of course, you know, being a minister and working in a church like I do, I I relate a lot of this to what happens in the church. And I was sharing recently that I remember being a little girl and I grew up Catholic. And in the Catholic Church, there's, you know, it's all icons. There's Jesus, there's Mary, there's Joseph, there's three combinations of all of this. Catholicism has lots of icons in its ceremony. And I grew up in American Catholicism where they're all completely porcelain white.
Yep.
So one day for Christmas, right before Christmas, my mom took me to the Catholic store because we were getting something for Christmas. And there was a black nativity. And I asked the lady at the counter because I had never seen a black nativity set. And we were in Montana. There's not a lot of that up there. And so I asked the lady at the store and she said, well, that's because all of us want to believe that Jesus looks like us. And she moved right over and said, it's just like that black Santa Claus. See that one over there? It's just like that. And in that moment, because to me, I was old enough for Santa Claus to be fiction, the idea of a black Jesus was equated with something that was not real for me.
Right.
And recently, in the same series of articles I was telling you about, one of the writers wrote about the fact that, you know, what are we thinking? Who's in the Middle East? Who are these people? Where did Christianity come out of? That these are people of color. These are people with brown and black skin. And so it's shocking to realize how emotional you can get if you let yourself settle into the reality of what has happened and how pervasive it is. As a 59-year-old woman, looking back on that story, it was an extremely tearful moment for me to realize that if someone had said to me, oh yeah, those people are from the Middle East, they actually are people of color, and we do white Jesus because we think white Jesus helps people to relate to it, that would have changed everything for me.
Absolutely.
Right? Because now suddenly the face of God becomes this beautiful face like yours. And how does that change how we relate, you know, how we see other people of color? So in that place of doing something, my column this week, which is the last column in that series, asks church leaders to do away with white Jesus in their church buildings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, to me, this seems like a normal thing. Like, of course we would do this. This is what's true. My husband, Mark, says, you are really brave. It doesn't feel brave to me. It feels like, well, yeah. Yeah. Because it changes everything. Right? When we tell the truth.
Yeah.
When we actually, it changes things for people of all shades of brown and black and white and everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
It's like what you say about just being able to sit in uncomfortableness, because the only way that things are going to actually really change is for us to realize the deeply rooted racist history of this country, and see what we can do to do better. We're so entrenched in the belief system. I just posted something on my Facebook about 2 hours ago that this Republican senator of Arkansas, Tim Hutton, said, was speaking about the necessary evil of slavery, and that he's against it being taught in schools, the history of slavery, because it would be a divisive thing to teach that. Not slavery that it happened, just telling people about it would be divisive and non-productive, you know. So that was a pretty amazing thing to read and to write and to hear about. Just it goes on and on.
But do you, so
More with that, and I kind of lost it.
let,
I posted that thing today.
let me ask you a question. You're in Portland.
Yeah.
The world is frightening in Portland. There are a lot of things happening that are of great concern.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you live. That's home for you. I see you as such a gift in the world, as having so much to bring to the world in this deeply spiritual sense of helping us get in our bodies and really accept and love who we are and express so fully who we are. Do you think that what's happening in Portland is happening in people's bodies or in people's heads? And how are you with that experience, with being there? Tell us about what it's like for you.
You know, honestly, the whole thing has been so extreme. I mean, now that the feds have left, from what I understand, I personally, because of my own PTSD, I did not really go downtown. I did go downtown to drum during the day just to like give some energy to the space itself and kind of transform it that way. That was my participation. But mine is to teach class, to go to more direct contact like that. Going down in all of what was going on, my system could not do that. But from what I understand, the feds have now left and the protests are now peaceful. You know what I mean? They're just, not being egged on by whatever forces. There have been peaceful protests. Are people doing it? I think I can't really speak to how and why people are doing it. I have a very close friend whose daughter has been at most of the marches. Like it's a thing that she does. She's a 20-something-year-old young woman, and she's down there on the front lines. And I hear these stories about her friends who are her age, and like one young man literally on the front line, right on the other side of the fence from one of the feds, just talking to him saying, hey, is this really who you want to be? Is this really what you want to do? Look at me. I'm a person. I'm standing here. and just this amazing story of how he engaged with this officer. And then, of course, the hammer comes out. It's 11 o'clock, and they drop the fence and start bashing and gassing people. But seeing this young man being willing to be right there, face to face, and because I didn't like, what are people doing on the front lines? Like, I didn't know, and I never heard that, and that was just really amazing to me. And then what I heard is, for a number of people, this really got me. For a number of people, they're going through the experience so that they can have the experience that being Black in America is like every day. Like how it is to be abused, to be gassed, to be mistreated, to be like whatever the thing is. They're like taking their lumps to kind of get their racist or abuse IQ up and going through the experience specifically to feel that. That was an amazing thing for me. I had to give big props for that. I mean, is it a smart thing? Is it a good thing? Is it a meaningful thing? I don't know the call. But the idea that people would do that intentionally to put themselves in harm's way as a statement, but also to have the experience themselves, to something, you don't forget that. You don't forget getting shot in the face by your own government because you're peacefully protesting, like a mother that I know did. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't go away. And when you tie that to wow, this was all because of people protesting police officers killing African American males with impunity with no repercussions. That's what this was. It tried to morph into all these other things, and it was also all these other things, but that's actually what it came from.
Yeah.
And so continuing to come back to that. So putting yourself in harm's way to embody that experience, I found really amazing. I found that particular piece I had to give props to.
Well, my son was down on our front lines for about 3 weeks here, and he was 17, just about to turn 18,
Right.
and it's the same listening to him talk about the experience and about the amazing people that he met and the conviction that they have and the ability to change the world. What I
Yeah.
love about the fact that these young people are out there is real things are happening.
Yeah.
Real changes are being made, and it's not without result. And I don't think if we hadn't had COVID right now, where everybody was home watching TV and saw what happened to George Floyd, and I don't know that we could have done what we're doing. But change is happening, and I hope that brings you hope.
It does. It does bring me hope. It's kind of alternately what the hell took everybody so long, sort of like what you're talking about. And, thank God that they're down there doing it. Because I'm too tired I'm too a lot of things to be down there,
Yeah.
And the truth is, when Black folks are talking about a thing, it's, oh, look at them talking about their righteous cause, but look at them talking about it. It's sort of like the book White Fragility. But when someone on the team, when hordes of white folks are going down and doing the protesting, it's another thing. It's taken as another level of seriousness, which of course speaks to the problem inherent in the whole thing.
Yeah.
But step at a time. You know what I mean?
One of
So
the things I loved about
that is what's happening.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about the protests here is that they were led by people of color with white kids there. There's something different about who has the voice, who has the leadership, and who you're following.
Yeah.
It's just, I could go on and on about this because I've had so many interesting experiences with this over the last couple of months. Understanding why, as a white woman with a PhD, I don't care, doesn't matter if anybody ever calls me doctor, but if I meet a Black person who has a PhD, I need to call them doctor.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It's just so many things. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes and talking about that, because what I want to get back to is the amazing human that you are, and you also have a unique perspective. And since I know you well enough to ask you some of these questions, I'm just grateful. Thank you.
So welcome. I have a quick story that I'd like to share, just in the can't believe that happened category. I was sitting in my Prius, my sky blue Prius. Like, I could not look more white or safe or acceptable than in my sky blue Prius, right? So I'm sitting outside of a school where I'm getting my African Marimba Zimbabwean band is getting ready to do a assembly. Remember assemblies in school, right? So we're going to play for this assembly. So I get there 20 minutes early. And so I'm sitting in the car and I'm, hotspotting my phone to my iPad, and I'm going to check some emails or whatever. This white man, and the window's down, and I'm just chilling. This older white man walks by, looks in the mirror, looks in the window, sees me there, walks around to the front of my car, looks at my license plate, looks at me, looks at my license plate again, looks at me again, and then continues to walk on. Right. The implication being, I see you here, you do not belong here, and I might have to do something about that. So I spent the next 20 minutes. It's this whole thing about being in your power, being embodied, and yet there's this physical reality called at any time, the red and blue lights could have been coming around the corner. Like that literally could have happened right there, just sitting in the car, just being there. Like, so now the next 20 minutes, I'm half looking there and half doing what I'm doing. And like, why? Because I'm sitting in my car waiting to go perform at the school I'm next to, why all of a sudden am I concerned for my life?
Right.
And he was so blatant about, like, look at, what I mean? Like, it wasn't even like trying to be subtle about it. Like he was making a point and wanted to make sure I got it. And it's that kind of stuff that's just, I alternately like one of the most empowered people that I know, and half like, oh my God, I'm just so tired. I'm just so tired. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have to, you know what I mean? Like, I know what I do in the world. I make the world better literally every time I go to work. Every time. And yet I got to deal with this.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. So there's that part.
Yeah. So that, if you told us nothing but that story, every minute that we spent with you would be worth it. Because this is what we're fighting, right? Like, we're going to change this. We are changing this. And we're changing it because we're hearing the stories. We're changing it because we're willing to be uncomfortable in that question of, how come I didn't realize this? And
And the next, and what are you doing today to make it different?
Right.
Because one of the things about the people on the front lines, the white folks on the front lines, is at any time they can go home and go back to life as usual. God bless them that they continue to go back. But the bottom line is they can go home and be like, you know what, I'm tired today and I'm not going to go. Totally valid. Guess what? I never get to freaking do that.
That is
ever.
right.
Every outside, that is a possibility. No, I do not walk with that. No, I do not carry that with me. No, I don't like live in fear of, but at the same time, I'm always aware. Where's the closest police car to me? Always. Always, always. And I'm not going to spend a lot of energy, but it's like, boop, okay, got it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working to change.
I had an opportunity, and some of the people on this call were there. We did a rally a few years ago to support a neighborhood where there had been Nazi symbology painted on a Jewish temple, and several of the black homes in the neighborhood were attacked. Right. And we came together in 3 days and had 600 people attend this rally. And largely because I spoke with the leader of the NAACP here, and she helped me, and we worked together.
Right.
When it was over, I am that white person, okay? I went, oh, this is so great. We had such a good turnout. It was so wonderful. I'm going to go home and sleep tomorrow. What are you going to do? And she looked at me very kindly, and she said, I'm going to do the same thing I've done every day for the last 20 years.
Exactly. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I thought,
yeah,
how naive am I?
Well, you get it when you get it. We're getting it now, and give thanks for that. And speaking of other things that I do, I want to make sure we have a moment or a few moments to enjoy this piece. So what do you think? Is it time?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you.
Yeah. So one of the ways that I don't spend all my energy thinking about all of that is because I do this. Many of you are probably familiar with a hung drum, or you've probably seen like hand pans. This is a hand pan from Russia known as a Rav drum. And the very process of playing this drum, which is a big, heavy chunk of metal, basically, artfully constructed and cut out, the alchemy is like metal appearing as water, appearing as air, and back to metal, and back to earth. And it's one of my, besides Nia and besides my dance into being work and other drumming, this is one of my main things that I bring to the world, is this instrument. And so I just wanted to play a little bit for you all to point out, to emphasize the transformative power of art as one of the ways that we get through this. And we have to have that thing that feeds our soul, that elevates us, that has us go, oh yeah. Like I wasn't feeling that great yesterday, and my energy was down, and I was feeling very spent. And last night I finally got to get in with my drums, and my system was like, oh yeah, there I am. There I am. So I want to support all of us in knowing what that thing or those things are, and to make sure that you do them for yourself. Because being embodied, being fuller within yourself, allowed you to go out and make more fully embodied choices and decisions and interactions. And we heal an interaction, a handshake, a glance at a time. So here we go. This will eventually become a song I wrote called Solstice. And I'll just give you a little taste.
That is so yummy.
Mm.
Oh, thank you, my sweet friend. Thank you for being here. Thank
Mm.
you for going into the uncomfortable water and bringing us back out. Thank you for bringing your heart to this time together. How can people find you? Because they're going to want more.
Right. Well, Saffire Bouchelion, you can share the spelling of my name. Saffire, then Bouchelion, Bouchelion. SaffirBouchelion.com, which is, or on Facebook. Those are pretty much the two best places right now, and mostly Facebook, probably.
Well, I'll make sure and add those at the end of this
Yeah,
recording as well.
great.
And we're going to stick around just to see if anybody has a question. But for
Okay.
this time, I'm going to say thank you to everyone for tuning in to Soul Talk Tuesday. And we will be back next week with a wonderful guest because I know some cool people in the world. And you
Huh,
just proved it yet
yeah.
again. You
I
proved it.
what?
Yes. Thank you for being here, my friend.